Hi, everybody, and thank you for being here today. For this panel, we're talking about building for Africa's diverse markets and obviously exploring the roles of cross-border payments in scaling. And thank you to the panelists for being here as well. So for this session, we'll just take questions, we'll throw questions to the panelists, and then we'll throw questions as well to the audience for them to also ask the panelists too. So for the first question we have here, just to go straight because we're already running out of time. So we're going to be asking, because when we talk about cross-border payments, we have a lot of questions that come up around that. And a lot of people have different perspectives to that. But I want to ask today, what are the key challenges and opportunities that exist when designing products for Africa's diverse and fragmented markets? And for this question, I'll be starting with Caroline.
Hello? Perfect, thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Carolyn. I lead East Africa for Paystack. Paystack is a payments aggregator. We make payments seamless across the African continent. I mean, a lot of folks have been saying the same things all day long, so it's probably not new things that I will be raising, but I think there's 54 countries in Africa, each of which have very unique payments needs and behaviors. It's super fragmented, lots of different payment methods. Each of those payment methods brings their own challenges in terms of operations, refunds, fraud behavior, settlements, and so on. Each of these jurisdictions have their own sets of regulations, different entities, bodies, banking integrations, and so and also, not one of these markets, there are very, very few markets on the African continent that are large enough where it's enough just to focus on one jurisdiction, right? So in order to be able to really access scale, you have to deal with multiple markets. That, of course, on the flip side, is an amazing opportunity then to really think about unifying those payment systems and being able to give access to businesses to be able to support all of these payment methods, to be able to access consumers and include them in the digital financial world. So I think there's lots of companies that's doing that today, a lot of mobile money companies that have really gone far. You look at Tola, Afrique, PowerPay, those are all connecting systems, and there's a lot more to do in terms of interoperability and making also business payments a lot easier across the country.
Thank you so much. Wole, I can see. Okay, awesome. You can take that as well.
Okay, so I agree with what Caroline has said, but I also have a slightly different opinion. I think the problem with cross-border payments or scaling across Africa is, like I said in my speech, is just lack of existing rails. One company cannot build the rails. So if you think about, let's say, a Revolut or a Wise, how did they start? What would they stack for what they did? How did that look like? Of course, they had an EMI license. They partnered with the bank to issue accounts for individuals or businesses. And then they probably went to JP Morgan or Citibank and took some APIs for G25FX. And then they partner with a few payout partners to send money to different countries. But here's the key part. They never had to solve for converting GBP to Euro or Euro to USD or USD to JPY. Why? The rails already existed. The infrastructure exists. So the question is, if you want to do cross-border payments across Africa today, what method or what can you do today to send money from Nigeria to Ghana? By Nigeria to Ghana, I'm not saying sending USD from Nigeria to sending USD in Ghana. How can you send Naira in Nigeria and the beneficiary in Ghana will receive CD? What rails are you going to build that on? The answer is that those rails don't exist. So by the time you look at an aggregation of the lack of rails in Africa, it means that even if you solve for payments in Nigeria, like Paystack has done an amazing job, increase the GDP of internet businesses in Nigeria. Yeah, you can do that in all 54 African countries, but you've still not solved the problem of integration, because the problem of integration, the problem of cross-border is an FX problem. How do you move from one currency to another currency? Cross-border remittance. Someone is sending money from UK in GBP to Ghana in CD. So it's not just about mobile money. It's not just about cards. It's not just about SWIFT. It's about the currency conversion. It's about the liquidity. It's about being able to just access this thing. So today, almost every African startup doing cross-border payments, they have to run their own treasury. You see people in 100 WhatsApp groups, 200 WhatsApp groups. In fact, I'll even draw on the experience when we just started at Fincra and started onboarding some of our global merchants. And then you see maybe one treasurer sitting in London, and we say, oh yeah, so to do this FX, we'll give you rates on a WhatsApp group. And they're like, WhatsApp? Like, it sounds crazy to them. Because what are they used to? They're used to sitting down on Bloomberg, looking at all the rates across all the different markets where they operate. But you want to operate in Nigeria, you want to operate in Ghana, you have to be in like 15 WhatsApp groups. One group with Veto, one group with Fincra, another one with Leatherback. Like, the rails just don't exist. So how can cross-border payments become easy? Of course, there's licenses. Of course, there's solving payments individually in each country. Of course, there's also regulatory challenge. There's, ease of mobility. But ultimately, it's literally building those rails. It's taking those WhatsApp conversations where trades are happening, those email confirmations, those voice confirmations, and putting APIs behind them. Building proper infrastructure that a Citibank treasurer can reliably trade with a platform in Nigeria without all of the risk involved. So maybe that's like a clearer picture of what the rails looks like. It is mostly an FX problem, not a payments problem, in my opinion.
All right, thank you so much, Wole and Caroline, for that. I like that you spoke about the fact that, the rails don't exist, and you gave reference to, the Europe and how obviously money is being transferred. So I want to ask you, Tobi, as well. Why do you think addressing cross-border payments is a critical component when scaling products in Africa? And also to tell us, what lessons do you think are there that, also we can learn from?
All right, thank you. So let's talk about two major challenges that if we get cross-border payments right, then these two major sectors will highly benefit from the payments rails that Wole just talked about. So I'm going to put this in an acronym. Let's call these two T's to make it very simple, just so that we can remember. So the first T is trade, making trade easier. The second is talent. So I will speak very quickly to trade. A couple of us came in or flew into Kenya. Some are based here. And in the few hours that we've been here, or let's say like 24 hours that we've been here, there are purchases that we've had to make. There are transactions that we've had to carry out. And we all are also very aware that the primary method or payments method in Kenya today is what? Mobile money, Momo. But imagine I flew in from United Kingdoms and I needed to pay for my food, maybe like an African meal. But the only currency that I have with me is pounds. So if we solve cross-border payments specifically for the trade segments or market, then I think that the trade, they're really going to benefit from it. And the second is the talent. So we all also know today that African talent, smart, brilliant, and our colleagues or companies, organizations in US, Canada are all looking for this African talent. But where the problem now lies is how do these talents get to be paid for the services that they render today? And given how huge that market is, the African talent marketplace is, imagine that again, cross-border for these user segments are solved. It will be so easy for a freelancer in Nigeria or Kenya to receive their payments from a client in the US, and then that same freelancer can withdraw in their local currency. So those two user segments for me, I believe that if we address the cross-border payment challenges there, trade, and then the second is talent, then that would significantly increase the continent's GDP.
Thank you so much, Tobi. Thank you for that. Just speaking about like addressing cross-border payments, it's also important to know that we have like regulators that are also there. And Henry, this is for you right now. So you obviously have worked across like different markets in Africa. So I want to ask you like, how do you think regulatory variations like across African countries affect scalability, right, in terms of like financial products and just like payment systems?
Yes, so I'm Henri Zietsman. I work for Amazon Web Services startups. I'm based in Cape Town. I would say, a good start would be to consider to build with AWS. The likes of Paystack, Flutterwave, Cellulent, and I can really go on, is already building on AWS. So get that out of the way. Secondly, if you are scaling, because what I do is I work with the investors in various stages of a company, going beyond the border. So in the early stage to growth stage to scale stage, is to understand where you're at to decide if it actually makes sense at that very moment to do the actual scaling. So make sure that you own the market that you're in already. When you are then deciding that the right market to scale towards, realize that just doing payments, because half of the funding across Africa has been in fintech for a while, you can actually facilitate that with the startups that I've mentioned, or the companies that I've mentioned right now. So you might not need to reinvent the wheel. But it's more than just moving and getting the payments out. It's also to do with soft landing, and that's essentially what my team does across the whole of Africa with startups. Do reach out. We've got technical partners that can advise you on policy and regulation to make sure that the landing gets done quite well. And I think I really like the comment earlier about scaling is more than just getting the payments out of a country. It's also having a partner or a payment partner that can help you do a soft landing in that country, because of the regulatory requirements will be quite strict, right?
Can I speak? I have a strong opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when it comes to regulation, like I said, I have a very strong opinion on it, which is this: African, and I hope they can all see this, African regulators should stop treating licenses like gold, right? License is not gold. The requirement for a license is clear, but what we see today is that licenses in Africa is quite politicized. I'll give a very good example. So Fincra, we started like 2019 pretty much, and within 3 months of starting, we had our license in Canada. I'd never stepped my foot in Canada. I did the license application myself, right, and we got the license. Today, you see almost every African fintech operating with a Canadian MSB with 0 operations in Canada. How about South Africa? We got a license in South Africa. I'd never stepped my foot in there. We just did the application submitted. But meanwhile, we have countries like Kenya, where we are today, Ghana, Uganda, Zambia, etc., where you see people spending 2 years, 3 years, even Nigeria to some extent, right? So people are spending 2 years, 3 years, 4 years getting licenses. Why? The regulators are putting a cap on the amount of people that can get licenses. There's just, in some countries, we don't give license to foreigners, but it's not written down. In some places like Ghana, you must have a shareholder local shareholder with 30% for you to operate in that country. And frankly, I think that those are like key barriers to like actually scaling, because on one end, the regulators require you to be licensed to operate. On the other end, the regulators are not giving you the license, right? And they're now very gray areas. Okay, can you work with a licensed fintech, right? And there's, okay, you can do this, you can't do this. And at the end of the day, if you think about it, what does a license, for example, mean to Fincra in any country? A license means we can come and bring our innovative solution that would eventually help to develop the markets. And I already started with the example of Paystack. If Paystack and Flutterwave did not exist today, right, everything we say about fundraising for startups, a lot of businesses that have gone on the internet doing great things, it would not happen. So it means that the licensing has actually opened pathway for prosperity. So for every African regulator that treats the license like gold, like as a Nigerian business coming to Kenya, you're coming to steal from us by getting our license, you are actually doing your country more harm than good. So if there's any regulator listening to this, I think the word should be out there. So like, don't make licenses difficult. African fintechs are getting EMI licenses in UK, MSB licenses in Canada. I'm even seeing African businesses getting MPI licenses in Singapore, MSB licenses in the US, without stepping their foot in those countries. Meanwhile, in Africa here, there's requests for bribes for you to get licensed. You spend 3 years, 4 years, and then eventually if you decide to partner with someone, you get penalized for operating. So it's quite an important thing that people hardly speak about, but it is clearly a regulatory problem. Stop treating licenses like gold. Thank you.
I'm just gonna add. um, so I agree with you for sure, Wole. But I also, part of there's a lot of mistrust also in the payment system, the financial system. Kenya's on the gray zone list. There's also a capability for the regulatory in order to be able to monitor all of the licensed entities that doesn't quite yet exist as well. It's like if you see a regulatory body almost like a startup and what they need and what kind of capabilities they need to also support licenses, that also needs to grow and expand as well with technology, because there are, I think we were speaking to the director of CPK yesterday. I think there's like 500 applicants right now that are waiting for a license. And they also don't necessarily have the capability right now and the team to go through 500 applicants and know which ones are going to be the ones that can be supported. So it's also figuring out how can these regulatory bodies expand their own capabilities to also support more licenses as well, because there needs to be monitoring in place. There needs to be these structures as well to make sure that the financial system is also protected.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to add, right, and not to piss anyone off, the reason why there are 500 pending license applications in Kenya is because they were not giving anyone licenses, right, for years. Maybe they give one person in 6 months or 2 people in 1 year. Fincra, for example, we fulfilled all the license requirements for at least 3 years in Kenya, but we still don't have it. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think the problem is quite deeper. Even before you talk about, do they have capacity to handle the volume of license? The question is, do they have the will to give people that qualify the licenses? And I think the answer is no.
Thank you so much, Henry, Wole, and Caroline for that as well. So, Henry, I also want to ask you, so you spoke about, like, obviously the licenses and obviously how regulators, like, play a very big role in cross-border payments in Africa. But I also want to ask, like, what strategies do you think, startups and fintechs can use to ensure, like, compliance, right, with local and, international cross-border payments regulations? Yes, Henry.
Yeah, great. I think a very important part for a founding team when they're scaling is to realize that you might not know everything. And therefore, you have to have essentially a trusted advisor in the country that you want to have a landing. So I'm going to go back really to my thought process that it's imperative that you work with the current, call it AWS Advanced partners. There's quite a few outside that come from that country that understand the regulatory requirements. I really like the comment earlier about the challenges of getting licenses. I just want to tap onto that as well a little bit. So we've seen quite a prolific growth in startup acts across Africa, but not a single one of those startup acts actually addressed some of these constraints, right? So what that means really is that there are forums available where we need to raise our concerns and voice regarding having this ability to operate in different countries across Africa. I think that's what makes our continent so beautiful and also so unique, right? Is that if we can pull this all together, then we have a real great opportunity to create jobs, be more efficient, and that may be in the moving of cross-border payments, etc., right? But it does start by understanding where you want to go and realizing that you might not know everything, and then rather working with a partner from that country because the regulations are different everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I like that you spoke about, just understanding where you go, because that's really something, whenever anyone in general is even trying to do stuff. So, Caroline, I want to ask, so considering that obviously Paystack, operates in a lot of, African countries now, and then it's like, what role do you think, emerging technologies like APIs and tech and AI play in terms of, just cross-border payments in Africa? Like, how do you think it's going to be, basically?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, to the point in terms of license, so we're licensed in 6 countries, but our ambitions are much broader than that. But we're not going to get licensed in 54, right? So the way we're going to scale is through financial partnerships and integrating basically our technologies in a way that's seamless so that the consumer who's paying and the business who's receiving the money actually doesn't know the different entities that's involved. It's still a very seamless experience for them. So there is so much evolving that's happening really quickly in terms of just financial partnerships and the technology we're able to leverage in order to do so, including with Fincra. And so, I mean, that's all API based, right? And I think the more we standardize how we work together, the easier that ends up getting. I think the other thing that has also been talked a lot about in previous panels is the role of stablecoin. And even though that is something that is not yet kind of adopted and regulated on the continent, if you think about, the big FX problem, if you're able to offer a more kind of ubiquitous digital currency, then makes money movement a lot easier. It makes liquidity management and treasury management a lot easier. So that's something that also I think will play a massive role in cross-border over the next couple of years. And then lastly, a lot of the issues in terms of moving money has to do with the operations around it, whether it's compliance, risk management, monitoring, refund support, all of those things. And that's where like AI, I think, will play the biggest role in terms of making us more effective and also efficient at being able to do all those things as we scale, because it just gets, the financial systems, core banking, everything just gets more complicated as you think about multiple currencies, multiple countries, multiple parties. And that's where I think those tools will just, radically change our ability to scale.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for that. So coming back to you, Tobi, you've been in products for obviously over 10 years, and I'm sure you have a lot of experience when it comes to fintechs and just, payments in general. So I want to ask, can you share examples of successful products that, overcame cross-border payments challenges in Africa?
Great question. So I'm going to walk us through a customer journey, and we're going to do these together, just so that we also get to experience this successful product that I've used. I still use today, I used yesterday, and just so that everybody can enjoy the work that has been done behind the scenes of fixing the payment rails, and users today can make payments to merchants in their local currency. So 2 examples that I will give. One is a product built in the African ecosystem, and the second is a product built globally. The first example is GigPay by Raenest. So Raenest today offers platforms, one for individuals seated, to those of us who are seated here. If you needed to make individual payments, or you needed to pay for example, your meal, a product that you can immediately use, a successful product that you can immediately sign up on, is GigPay by Raenest. And so how are you able to enjoy the services offered today? So on GigPay by Raenest, you can create a USD, GBP, or EUR bank account. And then if you wanted to pay for something, maybe on the road, or you walked into a store and you wanted to make payment, and then the merchant shared with you a mobile money account number, there are no fears and there are no worries on how you can complete that purchase, because on the application today, the only information it is that you need from that merchant is their phone number. Why? Because that payment method already exists. Okay? And also, the fear or the worries of, I'm getting into Kenya, do I need to create a Kenya bank account because I need to spend in Kenya? All of those also gone, because the money is withdrawn from your USD bank account or GBP EUR bank account, and the merchants receive their payments. So there are no fears of creating a mobile money account. So that's the GigPay by Raenest. The second is Wise. I'm sure some of us are already familiar with WISE. I would say WISE is also an organization that has done really well when it comes to global multi-currency accounts globally. So please do sign up on Gigte by Raenest. And for the days that you are here, ensure to just enjoy the experience. Just enjoy the experience, yeah.
Thank you so much, Tobi. That's a very amazing one. So I also want to ask you, Henry, right? Obviously, you obviously spoke about like you do everything like, startups, business development in Africa for AWS. I want to ask like, what are some key mistakes you have, like you've experienced that, companies make whenever they're trying to like enter into like a new African market?
Yeah. So it's almost like some of the founders really want to move very quickly across borders and not batten down and make sure that there is that massive demand in their own markets. Make sure that works, and then be very scientific around where you want to scale out. And I think we've got numerous examples. I don't want to call one out or so that have overextended in terms of the expansion model, right? So it is a business fundamental. Building a startup is building a company. The only time that a startup is when you speak to a venture capital fund or an investor. And I think that integral reality that you need to build a business on fundamentals is sometimes what I see where founders go off track. I'm not saying don't expand, don't move quick. I'm just saying make sure you realize you're running a business, and that does come with a lot of CVS. That you need to look after.
Thank you so much, Henry. So Wole, I have this question for you. So while you were speaking about, how hard it is for, fintechs in Africa to get like licenses, it was just interesting to see that, this actually exists. But I want to ask, like, how important do you think collaboration with banks, telcos, and even regulators are in terms of like building and scaling, products in Africa?
So yeah, I think it's quite crucial. So in terms of the rails, like I keep going back to, right? So the rails involves every single stakeholder, right, in the cross-border payment network, right? Banks, telcos, regulators, remittance companies, FX brokers, PSPs, global businesses, interbank markets, stable coins, cash, moving dollars from one domiciliary account to another domiciliary accounts, manufacturers, B2B fintech platforms, APIs. It's a very big picture. There are so many channels, there are so many stakeholders, right? The dream of where Africa should be in cross-border payments cannot be achieved even just by collaborating with banks, telcos, and regulators. It's everybody. And I'll just even have to draw back on that your question around APIs and AI, right? I would say APIs build on automation, scale builds on scale, and AI builds on data, right? I'll try and break down those three sentences. So today, most of Africa's FX is actually moved through WhatsApp groups. WhatsApp groups cannot scale. There needs to be automation. Meanwhile, in the West, most cross-border payments, FX, happens through Bloomberg platforms, Reuters platforms, platforms that have APIs integrated to them. And then you have FX brokers integrated to these APIs, banks integrated to these APIs, and then that makes up the entire industry. So we need to, first of all, move from WhatsApp to the African version of a Bloomberg platform, to the African version of a Reuters platform. That APIs can now be built on it. That's where the automation comes. And then scale will come from that scale. And AI will build on the data that is automated. So there is a world where we could have AI agents that trade FX in Africa. AI agents that would interact with someone that's trading on WhatsApp, but through a platform, right, that is not like Bloomberg, but works for the way African markets works, right? So I would say, it's all linked, it's all connected. Today, even banks in Africa, in Kenya, Nigeria, they trade on WhatsApp too. Even though they have in Nigeria, there's a B-Match platform, but the trades are happening on WhatsApp. So a bank, for example, needs to be able to integrate a Fincra's API A bank needs to be able to integrate a Fincra's API to scale to the markets where we exist. A telco needs to be comfortable to integrate Fincra's API to scale to the markets where we exist. And the regulator needs to give them the comfort to do it. In Africa today, or in Nigeria, for example, all the leading fintechs in Nigeria wants to do cross-border payments, but all the leading fintechs in Nigeria are scared of the CBN. Regulators, please allow people build.
Thank you so much, Wole. That was a very interesting one. And just to go back to the audience, so after now, we'll be taking some questions. So if you have some questions, it's the right time to just start noting that down. So I want to throw another question to all the panelists here, actually. From your individual perspectives, like, what do you think the future of cross-border payments in Africa would look like over the next 5 to 10 years? So I'm going to start with, from my right, so Tobi, Henri, Wole, and Caroline.
All right. So in the next 5 to 10 years, the future of cross-border payments, I would say three things to consider. The first is the platform for exchanges. So I see a world where payments happen within platforms that customers are very familiar with, and they carry out like their day-to-day conversations, removing the overhead of having to download another application that takes up space on your phone. So first is the platform for exchanges. The second is speed. I also see a world where payment happens at the speed of light. Why? Because we've gotten our payment rails right, and then the payment rails are now highly accessible to any fintech or organization it is that needs it today. Then the third, interestingly, that I believe that if we pay very close attention to, will move the needle. And the third will be cost. There'll be a reduction in cost. So if you look at the European market today, if I needed to make payment in Germany, and let's say, for example, I live in Netherlands, which is the share is a single multi-currency, a single currency, which is the euro. Imagine a world where that happened in Africa. Like we all know today, payments in Africa is highly fragmented. In Kenya today is mobile payments, M-Pesa. In Nigeria today is Naira. In Uganda today is Uganda shillings. In Ghana today is cedis, right? So imagine we had just one currency that an African can use for like their exchanges. And it might interest you to know that payments intra-Africa is more expensive than payments intercontinent. Do you believe that? Yes. You could do some more research on that. So, but what would make the cost drastically reduce is if we all come together and say we are Africa. Yes, there are 54 countries, but let's, regulatory, the bodies, partnerships, payment service provider, let's all come together and let's have like a unified payment, such that if I need to go to a Ghana and I need to make payment for something, it's just that currency. So that's really where I see cross-border payments in the next 5 to 10 years. So just a quick summary. The first, I talked about the platform exchange. The second, I talked about speed, payment to be a lot faster. And then the third will be a reduction in cost.
Thank you. Henri.
So, as I said, I'm quite fortunate to work with quite a few startups in Africa. I do think the solutions to many of these challenges that's raised is essentially going to be solved by Africa Tech startups from Africa. I do see a lot of great motions between the payment platforms cooperating, if you want to see it like that. I would love to say programs like Africa Free Trade would have a significant impact. I would love to say it, but I'm going to rest my hand on the innovation from this continent because I've seen the impact of what delivering focused solutions do in economies. One more thing I definitely would say is that Imagine you could have all your mobile bank wallets somehow paying each other. Wow, that'll be great. I haven't seen that tendency come up, and I do think it will eventually come to a point where that will need to be facilitated in some way between the various operators across the continent. But again, that's all legislative. So I'm going to just focus on back startups building in Africa Tech, and you will definitely see a improvement in what you said as well. Costs, you're right, it's $8 for every $200. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually less than in some other markets in the world. So yeah, that's my just saying thoughts.
Thanks to the other panelists. I sort of agree with some of the points. I see the future of cross-border payments in Africa as one where there is a single API or there are APIs available to convert all of Africa's currencies with each other, wholesale conversion, and to convert all Africa's currencies to the world's currencies. That's the most important infrastructure for cross-border payments. Because again, like I said, payments is mostly solved in a lot of countries. It's so easy to pay with M-Pesa. It's so easy to pay with Momo in Ghana. It's so easy to do bank transfers in Nigeria. It's so easy to do Momo in Zambia. It's very, like, I think it was in Rwanda, there was a country that also announced real-time payments. Payments domestically within every country is easy. In the worst of African countries, you have maybe a payment taking 1 day to settle. However, that's not the problem of cross-border payments. So payments is one arm. There is cross-border payments, which builds on FX. FX is by far the most important problem to solve. And it's not just solving FX in silos. It's solving FX through an API that the entire ecosystem can integrate to, so that we don't all have to go through the hassle of building our own treasuries from scratch, mostly WhatsApp-led treasuries, right? So someone mentioned AFCT. AFCT is an initiative of Afreximbank. And guess what? They came up with their revolutionary system called PAPS. PAPS is meant to be the payments rails for Africa, but PAPS does not work. Why? There is no liquidity on PAPS. PAPS has no APIs it's integrated to source liquidity to connect Naira to CD. We have those APIs. Interestingly, we are also liquidity providers on PAPS, but they are not integrating the APIs. So the API layer for all of the FX is the only thing that will solve it. Like, this is Amazon AWS right beside me. I'm pretty sure almost every day in the Amazon finance team, they are looking at how do we manage this thing. We're collecting Naira, collecting CD, but we need dollars. It's an API that will solve that problem for them. Collect Naira, settle dollar instantly. So many businesses want to come into Africa, but how will they move their money in? And every day we read the news, 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 airlines with their money stuck in Nigeria. How will they move it out? It's APIs. The bank should be able to pull liquidity from people that have these APIs. So I think, again, this is a call to everyone, for all of us here that run our treasuries on WhatsApp. Let us move from WhatsApp to automation. Scale is built on automation, and APIs are the only way we can scale this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last to Caroline.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has been said that I agree with, and I think those are all enablers for ultimately within 5 to 10 years, you're going to be able to have one integration to access all 54 countries. For a business that wants to scale across Africa, either a global business coming in or another African business, being able to access all 54 countries with one API to get paid across the continent. And then also being able to, as an African consumer, have one portal that you go to be able to access the world's financial system. So I can pay from my M-Pesa wallet to a USD bank account, my family that's in Sweden to a Swedish bank account. And I think that is absolutely possible within the next 5 to 10 years. It seems like a short time, but it's actually, with the rate of things that are moving and some of the technologies around that we've mentioned, I think it's possible for sure.
Thank you so much, everybody. Everything I got here so far was cost is something that we should be looking forward to in 5 to 10 years to reduce. Also to having instant payments. I think that's something that, we're already seeing, but it can definitely, do better over the next 5 to 10 years. And as Wole also mentioned, unified APIs, that's something that we should probably also look forward to in the next 5 to 10 years. So just my last question before we end this session. So I just have, one question that, every single panelist here can also answer. So I want to ask, what's like an advice you can give to, entrepreneurs that are looking to expand their products into new African markets? From your personal experience, I'll just probably say one or two, but yeah, so just let me know from your personal experiences. So let's start with Caroline for this one.
Figure out what you're really good at and then work with financial partners to scale yourself really quickly, and pick the right financial partners, and ideally have the decision maker on WhatsApp calls. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
She stole the words right out of my mouth. But, I'm always proud to say it anywhere in private and public. If you want to scale across Africa, a very good partner to work with is Paystack. I love them so much. You can also work with Fincra, who are quite great at what we do. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Henry.
Yes, I really want to repeat that as well. But I think the reality is, don't be shy, stand up, make points like you did today that will change thought process. In every one of us, you have the ability to change and bring people together. And I believe that networking effect of going out to meet the right people, making sure you are meeting the right people, that can all make a huge difference in a personal career and also within business success.
Tobi.
All right, so I'll give us three points, and this is to businesses who are looking to scale in Africa. So the first is, you need to intentionally build the right infrastructure. And I'm going to use an example of fintech. So you see there's a rise in a lot of fintechs coming out with fintech company, but in all of the announcements, there's something that's also happening in the background if the infrastructure is not being catered for properly. And that's something we are all scared of: fraud. So while, yes, we can gloss over the shiny product, it's also very important that we take into consideration the infrastructure, the core banking application, how well is that built, the accounting, the compliance, very important, the AML, your anti-money laundering processes. What processes have you put in place? Because guess what? If you rush into the market, you would rush out of that market. And I'm sure that we all do not want that, because that equals waste. So the first is, you have to take your infrastructure serious if you want to scale your business in Africa. The second is that you cannot build alone and you cannot build in silos. There are people who have gone ahead of you. Find those people. There are people who have built successful companies. Ask them, have you built this? And what licenses are required to expand into this market? Very important questions that you do not want to take for granted, because guess what? If you go into a market and then you sell your product there and you do not have the right license, what do you think would happen? You'll be blacklisted, and I'm sure you do not want that to happen. And then the third, which is very product related, is understand your target market. What I've mostly seen happen is that we have used organizations today whose product has worked in a certain region. For example, a product works in Ghana, and then you make the assumption that that same product will work in Kenya. Why? Is it because they're both East African countries? Most of the time, that it never works, because their needs and pain points are different. So you now need to do the legwork of, oh yes, I have this product. However, the services that I offer in this product today, how will this product serve the needs of the users in that market? So it's never a one-size-fits-all situation. And this is very important. I do think that we take for granted what is called product market fit. It is that your product fits the needs of the market. So just to summarize the 3 points that I made, starting from the last: product market fit, understanding the needs of the users in the market, The second point that I made is, yeah, so first is product market fit. The second point that I made is speak to successful founders who have gone ahead of you. Try to understand the licenses required. And then the third is do not take your infrastructure for granted. That is literally the backbone. That is the foundation for scale for any organization who is going to become a unicorn, or who is going to be publicly listed, or who is going to grow in revenue and profit.
Thank you so much, Tobi. Thank you so much, Henri, Wole, and Caroline. You all have spoken so much on this topic, and I do believe that these are things that people are definitely going to see, and they're definitely going to, use this in the future as well. So we're already out of time, but I would still love to take some questions from the audience if we have any. Maybe just one or two if anybody has. Okay, all right. That's awesome too. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for being a part of this panel, and we do appreciate you being here with us today.